Okay, guys, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties. I hope they're fixed now. We're having an Indie Spotlight Special Edition Wednesday episode with the legendary Gerald Veasley. So let's see if everything is working now. Here it is. There you go. Hi.
Yay!
Nay. Everything's working. Yeah, I normally like did the whole like I did like the intro like a couple times and I was like, let's get this going. So
You know what? Listen. You have a future as like tech support. You hooked me up. I appreciate you so much.
thank you.
You had your
Oh,
professional tech voice on and click this through that. Yeah, man. You got a whole other side career.
wow, thank you.
Uh,
I'm so happy that I was able to help you and I'm so excited and honored to be interviewing you.
oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure.
Yes. The first thing I wanted to say was how's your evening going?
Evening's going really well. It was a beautiful day here in Philly. It was warm.
Mm-hmm.
I got outside a little bit. I
Mm-hmm.
managed to get some fresh air, which, after a rough whatever, it's nice to get
Mm-hmm.
out and get some sun and some air. And it's just, yeah, it's a really good day.
It is. It definitely is. And I also want to thank you for being so reachable. Because
Oh,
everyone that I contact for interview is not always very, very reachable, or like a lot of like emailing, communicating, and stuff like that, and you have to recommunicate. So thank you for that.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate the opportunity. And I'm also grateful for what you're doing, helping to shine a spotlight on indie artists. And that shows a lot of, love that you have as a creative yourself. And it's nice
Mm-hmm.
that you're kind of paying that forward. So thank you.
Well, thanks. I'm excited that you said that, and you're welcome. And I wanted to ask you about. So you are from Philly. What part of Philly were you raised in?
Yep, I grew up in West Philly. And yeah, went to Bartram High School. Yay,
Oh
Braves.
my God. Oh, I live in Southwest
Oh,
currently.
did you? Okay.
Yeah, I'm not far from where I'm
Oh,
from.
great, great. And yeah, it was good times. And yeah, still close with a lot of my friends from the neighborhood and even some of my alumni. We actually have a men's group called Men of Bartram, and we do scholarships for Bartram students. We do mentoring. So it's really a cool thing to stay connected to the community for sure.
Wow. And one of your mentors was Grover Washington Jr.
Yeah, I consider him a mentor in that he was very encouraging and would give advice. I mean, he wasn't a man of a lot of words, but he would give advice, especially around, making sure that you, even though you have this desire to be a music professional and to tour and to record, he said all that's good, but family comes first. So he was
Mm,
really good about that, about making sure that myself and the other musicians kind of had our priorities straight. So he was a mentor in that way, and also watching how he carried himself, whether it was on the bandstand as one of the world's greatest saxophonists, but also
mm.
off the bandstand as a business person. And yeah, I was grateful to be mentored by him in that way.
That is awesome. Where can people find you at as far as like your social media platforms or like websites? Where can they find you?
Sure, my website is geraldveasley.com. And we have this educational program we've been doing for, wow, 18 years called Bass Boot Camp. So you can
Yes,
take
I
it.
was going to ask about that.
Yeah, it's a cool program. They can find about that at bassbootcamp.com. And, we've got our Facebook and Instagram um, and Twitter. It's just my name, just Gerald Veasley. And you could also search for Bass Boot Camp. Yeah, but the Bass Boot Camp has been a program where we coach musicians to just become more closer to the instrument. They may have questions about the technical side of playing. They may have questions about how to get over their fear of improvising, their fear of playing in front of the audience. So we kind of give people a kind of a virtual hug because now we're doing it as a virtual format, but to give people a boost up to uplift uplift them, because we feel like everybody has music inside of them. Everybody has a story inside of them. And the bass is one of the greatest instruments that you can choose in terms of playing music right away. So I've had students that didn't have any experience playing, and they come to the bass boot camp, and we'll teach them how to play a bass line with just 2 or 3 notes. So a
Wow.
bass is one of those really instrument that's inviting in terms of
Mm-hmm.
learning right away. And of course, you can get very technical. There are people who've been playing for many years. So we teach everybody from the absolute beginner to advanced.
That is awesome. So could you tell me about, I see that you were on Billboard in 2008 on the contemporary jazz chart for Your Move.
Uh, yeah, so
So
we've had some good chart success through the years. Your Move
mhm,
was a CD that's very important to me, because a lot of the
mhm.
music was produced by the late, great Chuck Loeb, who was an amazing guitarist and producer. Sadly, he's no
Oh,
longer with us, but he played
oh,
with people
I'm
like
sorry to hear.
Foreplay, and
Oh,
I got a
okay.
chance to tour with him as well as record with him. And he's someone who was just the ultimate professional, and so that's why that CD is really special to me, Your Move. But
Mm-hmm.
I've had the chance to work with so many great artists through the years on my recordings. People like Rick Braun, Grover Washington was kind enough to play on some of my records. One of my best friends, Bill Jolly, wonderful pianist from here, and I'm working on a CD with someone that I know that you're close to, which is Carol Riddick, because I know you had her on your
Yes,
show. So she and
yes,
I are
I have one of
working.
those.
We're working on a recording project, which is the music of Nina Simone, which is
That is
near,
well,
near and dear to
beautiful.
my heart. Oh yeah.
So you have already made 10 studio albums?
Yeah, a combination of 8 studio and 2 live. We
Oh, okay.
I've been curating music at a place here in Philadelphia called South
Yes.
for about 5 years now. And
Mm-hmm.
when we got that opportunity to bring in, some of the very best contemporary jazz artists like Keiko Matsui, and we had Kim Waters and Rick Braun again, Peter White. We've had all these great artists. But one of the key things I wanted to do was to be able to bring my band in and record in front of a live audience. And it came out really, really well. It's called Live at South.
Right, right. Um, is it so what I wanted to also ask is it hard to play a six string bass? And did that was that something, is that normally something like maybe that a lead guitar would do, or no, it doesn't really matter?
Well, it's an interesting question, because the strict 6-string bass used to be rare. Now you're seeing it more and more often. I don't even know how many years I've been playing 6-string at this point, maybe over 25 years. But
Wow.
I grew up playing bass, but I also had this love of guitar. And in fact, my first formal teacher was a guitar player, but he taught bass. So he kind of taught me sort of an unorthodox way of playing the bass. And you can see
Hmm.
here in my music room, I've got guitars all over the place. So I think about that connection between the bass guitar and the guitar. And so when the 6-string bass came along, people like Anthony Jackson was one of the first people. This wonderful, even if folks don't know the name, they know the sound, because they know the song "Money, Money, Money, Money." When you go back and
Yeah,
hear
by the
that,
OJs.
that bass
Yeah.
line
Mm.
was created by one of the greatest bass players that America's ever produced, Anthony Jackson. So he was one of the first people to play the 6-string bass. But when I heard that sound, I said, man, with my love of guitar, because I studied some classical guitar, I love
Mm.
flamenco music, I love jazz guitar, but I'm like, this is a combination in a way of everything that I've always admired. So I've been specializing in that for a few years, and it's so great because the 6-string bass allows you to not only play the funky, deep bass lines, but
Hmm.
also allows you to play beautiful melodies and chords, and take your improvisation to a next level. And so to me, it's, I may be biased, but it's the ultimate instrument.
Oh, wow. So I see, I read some things about you, and I see that you worked with Will Downing.
Yeah. Yeah, I recorded with Will Downing, and then I had a chance to actually perform with him live, and And actually, and also I brought him in as a special guest in one of my performances at the Berks Jazz Fest and also the Rehoboth Jazz Festival. And I'll tell you, it's so funny. At Rehoboth, I didn't even, we're playing like the intro to bring him on. He's on the side of the stage. I didn't even get a chance to say his name. The audience caught a glimpse of him. Okay, let's be honest. The women caught a glimpse of him. And they just went off. It was almost like the lights had been off and somebody plugged in a giant lamp because
Wow.
it just went crazy. He has such charisma. And, but he's such a beautiful person, just so warm and so generous, and obviously one of the great voices of our lifetime. But I love that brother. He's a good man.
Wow. I also heard or also read that you also worked with McCoy Tyner.
I did. So the interesting thing about the career that I've had is that it's been somewhat diverse in that musically I've played with people who were associated with straight ahead music or avant-garde or free jazz, and also people on the contemporary smooth jazz side, because I just look at it as all music with improvisation at the
Exactly.
core. But I'll tell you,
Hmm.
and I'm a person who grew up like in a musical family, and so I've never been
Yeah.
afraid of being on stage. I don't think I've ever had stage fright that I can think of. Very
Wow.
rare. I love just performing, but I'll tell you, when I stood on that stage with McCoy Tyner, who's one of the who he passed away, I guess it was last year,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But he's known for his work with the
It's
great
sorry to
McCoy
hear that.
Tyner, and then of course his various trios. I stood on that stage with him, and he counted off the song, and all of a sudden there was this thunderstorm, and it shook me up because I wasn't expecting that. But then I realized it wasn't thunder, it was McCoy. His left hand on the piano and his presence was so loud and so confident and forceful.
Powerful. Wow.
Powerful, that's the word. That it really scared me for a moment. And I kind of
Wow.
froze. It's the only time that ever happened because he really was a force of nature. And I was blessed to work with him. And that's part of
Yes.
jazz, too, is that um, in music, there is, if you, as you're aspiring to be a professional, one of
Hmm.
the things that you're always looking to do is you want to build your credits. Your resume. I played with this person, played with that person,
Hmm.
gives you credibility. But
Yeah.
what I realized a long time ago is that it's deeper than that. When you're playing with these artists, you're touching something that is eternal and something that is so much bigger than yourself. Like the fact that I played with McCoy, and McCoy was connected to Coltrane, and Coltrane was connected to Miles. Miles was connected to Charlie Parker, and so on. You're part of this river, right, where everybody is dropping a little piece of their soul in it. And so it's super important to recognize that that's the most significant thing about being around what we call the greats in jazz.
Like also like literally like what you said is like yeah, the essence of it. But I noticed that how rich like jazz is in African American history, and how exciting like to see music from their era and how it like evolves and all the different styles and stuff. And I actually have a story that my mom, of course, I'm from Philadelphia too, but my mom grew up next door to Lee Morgan, his brother, and his mother.
Unbelievable.
It is. I was like, what? And so I like looked at a lot of like the documentaries. I wrote a paper on about him
Oh,
when
wow.
I was attending Temple University, sorry.
Uh-huh.
And it's just like so much great interest in history. I hope one day they will have like a series about all like all jazz, and they'll have different people play. I even have people picked to play different jazz people in my mind.
Uh-huh. Oh, I
It's
want to hear more about that. It's interesting. So much I could say about that. First of all, your mother and the fact that she took the time to tell you these stories and to connect you with the culture and the history is super important. And think we need to do more of that.
Yeah.
But Lee Morgan somebody just told me the story the other day that he was he was so bad that he was already, as a teenager in high school, he was light years beyond his peers. And
I know.
really, everybody who's heard him play, even as a young person, knew like he's got it. And there are certain artists that come along, you don't even know how that's possible, but they have it. But Philly has produced so many artists, and I agree with you. It would be nice to chronicle everybody. One of the things now, what we didn't talk about is that I co-lead an organization here in Philly called Jazz
Yes,
Philadelphia,
Jazz Philadelphia.
and it's a
Mm-hmm.
nonprofit. And one of the things it's designed to do is to educate people and interest people in the great, rich history of jazz here in Philadelphia, both the recent past and the past going back to the early 20th century. I mean, even in the
Mm-hmm.
19 teens, they were amazing musicians, and the musicians who are coming up now, like the next wave. And we are creating on our website, which this will be launched in mid-May, our first jazz history timeline, where you'll be able to go on the website and see great stories about some of these artists that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be built over time. We're starting with a few, but the most difficult thing in building this timeline is, where do you stop? Because we have so
Mm-hmm.
many artists. I mean, just bass players alone, like Victor Bailey, Jimmy Merritt, Jamaluddin Tacuma, Stanley Clark. I mean, just the bass players. Not Matt Garrison, his father, Jimmy Garrison. There are just so many. And so the question is, where do you draw the line? But Philly has produced wonderful artists and continues to produce artists who contribute to this great music.
Yes, definitely, definitely. When did Jazz Philadelphia start? When did you start it,
Yep,
Jazz Philadelphia?
in 2017. So it's a
Oh, okay.
relatively new organization, and it grew out of this need to bring all the jazz organizations together and to figure a way that we can help tell this story that I just described about the rich history of jazz, and to not only celebrate the music, but help make jazz an attractor for tourism and for visiting. And I think what we've done so far in terms of helping to tell the story has been really warmly received. We've also produced 3 conferences, major jazz conferences that had never been done before, where we invite thought leaders on all sorts of topics, whether it's performance related or whether it's holistic about wellness for musicians, or whether it's about critical issues like social justice and race and jazz. So we're doing this kind of work, and it's all centered on lifting up community, bringing community together, and telling the story about not only the artists that have come before, but the artists who are doing the work now, especially the young emerging professionals. Because here's the thing: if we don't create what we call an ecosystem, or an overall environment where these musicians can grow and thrive, we're going to lose them. And we lose artists sometimes to other cities where there's a maybe more opportunities to perform. But now we're in danger of losing these talented people to other disciplines. So
Mm-hmm.
if they can't make a living playing music and pursuing their craft, they're going to do other things. And we want to stop that. We want to provide opportunities. And so we've got mentorship programs. We have an intergenerational program called Passages, which will connect elders and younger players to help inspire them, give them tactical information. So what we really feel is that our responsibility to stand in the gap for musicians who aren't not just getting enough opportunities to thrive, but even to know what to do, whether it's on the business side, the music side, the cultural side, the history side.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's very important for I think it's very important for everyone to know about how important jazz is, and how things and like how it influenced different music even music of nowadays. Like I'll say this, like when I did go to school or when I did go to Temple U
Hmm.
and and I did sing and stuff, and I was learning how to do like improvisations
Right.
and how to like go back and like scat or like use the same notes and stuff like that. That's actually one of the elements that actually people use. What I'm noticing is one of the elements that people use actually when they're rapping or rhyming. It's like the
Interesting.
same element. And I think that people just need to find out that they can connect to jazz and that maybe it's not as complicated because sometimes like what is it? What do I want to say? Like sometimes like the music theory, when I went to school, music theory was one of the hardest things ever for me. A lot of other stuff came natural, but like the theory was so hard.
I get it.
And
I totally get it. So
the theory's so hard.
while we were talking about shining the light on the music, I had to get my light. I had to do right because I know, which is,
Oh,
you know,
okay.
I had to, because I want to be correct when I'm on your show. So I think that's a little bit better. But, I think jazz, if people take the time for like
Mhm.
aspiring jazz listeners,
Mhm.
they can find the music because they can find something in the music that resonates with them. And there's
Mhm.
so many different styles. I would say that each artist is almost a style to herself or himself. So if you don't like the first four artists, you might like the fifth one. So it's just about
Yeah.
finding that flavor. I'll also say that historically, the music has been not just a cerebral or academic music. It was music that you could groove to. It was music that you could dance to. You could go to, one of the many organ rooms or bars that you said in Philadelphia and hear this group. And it would just be like after a hard day's work, you go and you sit there and people would just be you nodding their heads. And they're not thinking, they're not analyzing or kind of pulling the music apart in
Mhm.
the abstractions of the music. They're just feeling it, and it's talking to them or speaking to them in a way that just makes their life just for a few moments a little less difficult. I think that's what jazz does. Also, um, we have great singers that we've produced and great instrumentalists. And I think one thing that they have in common when you hear their music is they invite you to use your imagination. Like when I saw the Lady Day movie, the United
Oh, yeah, the
States versus
United States against. Yes, I watched it too.
and Andra Day. Oh my goodness! But you could feel when you hear her sing, or when you hear Billie Holiday herself sing. It's not just the lyrics; it's what's underneath that longing for
Mhm.
whether it's a relationship or that
Mhm.
longing for what your place in society, your identity, or the pain of a song like Strange Fruit, right? There's
Oh my,
something
yeah.
in there that touches people that has nothing to do with, the cerebral part, but like your heart and soul. So I would encourage folks who may be a little bit afraid of jazz to don't just dive in because there's some great music out there with people who are intentionally putting their heart and soul into the music for you to receive it and for you to find, and this is my approach, and for you to find some healing in that music. We live in a lifetime that's so difficult, and I think music is so powerful, and I think it's all of it's powerful. Oh, I see Jaleel Shaw is here. You talk about an amazing Philadelphian. He's a wonderful saxophonist who hails from Philadelphia and truly one of the young musicians who has made his mark and has made us proud. What's up, Jaleel? It's good to see you. So, it's like it's the
Uh,
music, and I would say people like Jaleel in that generation, and even non-Philadelphians like Robert Glasper and so on, and Esperanza Spalding and Christian McBride. What they're
mhm.
doing is they're taking
Amazing.
music in a lot of ways back to its human roots and making it something that's attractive from a soul and just a few human feeling perspective.
I'm definitely I I'm definitely just like soaking up everything like you're saying, and also that you make it very easy to understand. it's very easy and very welcoming to understand. And it's great when you feel like at ease and you feel like your mind is open and you feel like you can just like go inside of a jazz club and listen to any jazz artist and you can actually also talk to them and get to
Yeah.
know them. You have like now that I'm inviting more people that do jazz. So far I've had Lucas Carlos O'Reilly
Oh yeah.
there. Um, you. I've had Kara Riddick, and I've also had Benny Benack the third.
Nice.
And I, so I really, I'm really liking like interviewing and making sure that like in between like my interviews, also I have like interviews with jazz artists because it's really important.
I appreciate that. I appreciate you recognizing the importance, and I think it's just great music. I think also the fact that jazz is rooted in just this great black tradition of music.
Hmm.
This is it's almost so widely known that we shouldn't even have to mention, but that the roots of this music are connected to the music, roots of R&B and to the roots of gospel and to the roots of the blues,
Yeah.
and I would dare say hip hop. That it all comes from that
Mhm.
same those same roots in the tree trunk, and then those various art forms branched out differently. But then you just see artists who kind of reach across the branches and bring in those other influences. Like a Robert Glasper embracing hip
Mhm.
hop because he grew up in appreciating that music, or as like
Yeah.
Kamasi Washington, same thing, or people in other times who embrace the blues because people even put people as brilliant as Wynton Marsalis. You could see in his career a point where he turned back or forward, however you look, to the what he called the majesty of the blues. So
Yeah.
and gospel. And speaking of movies again, the Mahalia Jackson movie. I don't know if you saw that yet.
I haven't seen that yet, but I
Incredible,
was definitely interested in it.
incredible, right? But one of the things that film pointed out was how she never sang a song the same way twice. She was always feeling it, the moment differently, and expressing herself differently. That's what jazz
Hmm.
is. It's the spontaneity of like, hey, I felt this way on Tuesday. That's how I played it or sang it. Today, some other stuff is going on. So you're going to hear it a little bit differently. So get ready. This is not paint by the numbers. This is real life, which is fluid and which changes, and that's the beautiful thing about the music is that it changes.
That is so. That's I'm glad like you gave us like the perspective of jazz and how we should be looking at it and appreciating it. And it has a lot to do with like the new like the well, I don't want to say new, but new genres that we found. It's like we use pieces of jazz. In fact, you can even hear it in like the mix of like neo soul.
Absolutely,
And so a lot of it is in there. So when you hear
absolutely.
that like really, really that deep chord that you can't get out of your mind and it's really deep and it's great feeling,
Uh-huh.
that's what's going on when we hear that deep and richness and stuff like that. That's what's in it.
Yeah, I agree with that because yeah, the chord structures they're going to be a little bit different than maybe the R&B that came before. So yeah,
Hmm.
you heard that immediately with neo soul, and I think one of the things that jazz does so well is it introduces people to subtlety, right? So the fact that it's multi-layered, like the first layer might hit you like in your face, like, oh man, that was a great solo. I felt something, or she hit that note. But underneath, like some of the things you're talking about with neo soul, like something else there that you can't put your finger on. But it
Hmm.
runs to me, it runs through all great black music where it's multi-layered. Like when I hear a Donny Hathaway song, like I literally hear layers in his voice. I hear um, the his connection to classical music in the way that he put the music together. I hear his connection to jazz and his phrasing, and I hear a quality that of the gospel in his music. But I also hear, the shared celebration that Black people have had, but also the shared struggle that we've had. That's all in there.
Hmm.
So again, I'm kind of beating the drum about, for people who want to listen to jazz, don't just look at how difficult or how it is or how complex it seems at first. Let yourself go to the feeling of what the artist is projecting, right? And also, it's a music that invites you to bring your own story to the table when you're listening to music, right? Because you and I might go to hear Jaleel Shaw and hear him play something. Like I remember, I heard him. I hope I got this right. I heard him when he was still in high school play this famous song, "In a Sentimental Mood." I'll never forget it.
Oh,
Right?
that's one of my favorite songs.
Oh, that's one of my daughter's favorite too. But you and I could be here sitting together, listening to the song and feeling two entirely different things because of our experiences. I think that's what jazz invites you to do, to bring your imagination to it.
I have like a little funny story, but like one time I was like in a school and they were flashing pictures, and this is when I was like really studying like a lot of jazz and a lot of jazz um female front singers and um female front singers, and somebody flashed a picture of somebody up there, and they was like, they got the wrong, it was the teacher, he got the wrong name, and I'm like, that's Donna Washington.
Oh, wow.
And everyone was like, what? And then they looked it up on Wiki, and he just like didn't accept it. And then like everybody, Google, so everybody like Googled it. And I'm like, you guys are saying that you're going to be, singing like a lot of we had a lot of female singers that were singing. And, I was like, like, they didn't know, they weren't aware of their history. They was just aware of what is it called? Like, just aware of the stars of jazz.
Right, right.
And not aware of other people that was in jazz. So that was just, I don't know. I just talked about that for a minute.
That's a funny story. What's interesting is that here's the positive in that I see is that there has never been a time in the history of civilization or civilizations where we've had such access to information.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like when we get off this meeting, I can go to YouTube and have a visit with Dinah Washington. I can go and pull her up, and it's like I'm right there. We've never had that like this, like we have. So I'm not going to say there's no excuse for delving deeper, but we have this rich opportunity to listen to all of that great music and just not just learn about it, but like let it seep into our hearts and souls.
Definitely. You definitely make it sound very inviting. It is inviting already, but definitely like when I listen to you, it just sounds like calm. It sounds cool. It doesn't sound technical. It sounds like you just want to sit there and like look at the show and bring your friends and everything else.
Yeah, somebody just said that if the library is over, all the information. He's so right. The days of going to the library is over, and all the information you need is in your hand. That's so true.
Definitely.
Rest in peace to all the libraries, but I was a kid who I did love going to the libraries, and I loved it.
I missed that too. Mm-hmm. You worked with the late Gerald Levert.
I did, yeah.
Wow. So when did you work with him?
So we used to use the same studio. It was a studio called Sigma Sound, which is a legendary studio here where most of the great hits that come out of Philly International were produced in their studios. And even though he had lived in Cleveland, he used to come back here to record because his father and the OJs, they had such great success. It was almost like he was superstitious. He's like, I'm going there where they had all of those hits. So
yes.
I would often see him, and he would, one time he invited me to play on his records, and it was fascinating. This is what I learned from Joe Levert. He had me play on this record that they wrote that morning. So he and his producer, I can't think of the producer, Tony Nicholas. They wrote the song in the morning. He recorded the lead vocal in the morning. He brought in the background vocals in the afternoon. He brought me in the early evening. They mixed that song basically before nightfall. They worked so efficiently. And I've to this day, I've never seen anybody do that. And when I say like work on a song and the song is done, I mean like a hit. And so his approach was like, because I'm kind of meticulous in the studio, so I'll be like, oh man, can I do that one more time? And Tony said, no, man. And I turned to Gerald. I was like, Gerald, let me hit that one more time. He was like, no, that's it. And he would press the button. Okay, bring in the next musician. I was like, because their approach was, and it's almost like a jazz approach, which is don't worry about perfection. Catch people in the moment, whether they're singing or playing, and give them that room to do what they do and move on. Because a lot of the times the things that we obsess about don't really matter. They don't keep things from being a hit, because it's all about that feeling and love, like what you're feeling in the moment. But he and his producers, they were like machines in the studio, in terms of, and he was somebody who was really brilliant in terms of putting music together. Yeah. Somebody said, yes, that's the vibe and the energy real music gives. Totally.
Yeah, definitely. If anyone has any questions, also put it into the question. There's a bubble with a question mark there if you want to ask any questions. So the next, and also I see that you worked with Philip Bailey from Earth, Wind and Fire.
Yeah, that was amazing, because Philip and I, at one point, when he started his solo career, we were on the same label. And I played on his album, he played on my album, and we actually did a cover of Quiet Storm, which he loves Smokey Robinson, I love Smokey Robinson.
Yeah, I was gonna say Smokey Robinson's Quiet Storm.
And Philip has that range, and just so easy to work with and so generous. And then the record that he produced, his first solo record, I don't know if it was his first, but for that label, it was on Heads Up Records, was a jazz record. So that was beautiful to hear him kind of stretch out. But when you hear Earth, Wind and Fire, that they can do everything. There's no limits. In fact, some of those early albums, there was a song, there was one song they called Do You Hear the Voices Left Behind? And it's a straight ahead tune, and they're using some of the elements of Giant Steps, the great John Coltrane tune. So Earth, Wind and Fire was just beyond in terms of their musicianship.
Okay, so I'm sure that was a great experience. What advice would you give to an up and coming artist or instrumentalist?
First of all, I would say I'll put it this way: what I've learned from watching young aspiring professionals, the ones that really do well, there's a few things that they're doing very well. Number one is they're not afraid to network. They're not afraid to put themselves out there. Or if they're afraid, they have a way of overcoming that fear. And fear is something that can hold us back, in terms of going to that next level in our careers. Whether it's a fear of speaking, a fear of that you may be exposed, you don't know what you're doing, or whatever it is, or going up and starting a conversation with someone. But getting over that fear of networking and connecting to people, that's one of the first things, because it's a very people-oriented industry, very people-oriented.
It is.
Yeah, I would say other thing is that never stop learning your craft. Like, never stop learning your craft. I mean, behind me are music books that I'm still working on, and I'm still developing, I'm still practicing, and still finding flaws that I'm trying to fix, and I'm still finding things that I'm curious about. So never ever stop learning.
We can't stop learning after we heard someone like that's legendary like you.
Well,
to keep honing their craft, definitely have to.
Yeah,
I agree.
I think you have to, because I'll put it this way: whatever God has put into you or me, then it's our duty to bring it out and to make it the best it can be. Like to really, because there's natural talent, right? So whatever that is, right?
Mhm.
But that only gets you so far.
Mhm.
Like, what are you going to do with it now? You know, what are you going to do with what has been placed inside of you? So that's where the work
Mhm.
comes in. That's where the hunger comes in, and the never settling, never being complacent. That's our responsibility. So God already did his part, right? He put it in us. He put the desire in us. He put the talent in us. Now he's waiting. Like, how are we going to serve with it? What are we going to leave behind? And that only comes by, you know, being creative. I mean, being persistent and being and digging deeper and trying to find out what else you have to learn and to share. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the music, artistic, creative side. The business side is
Oh,
about networking. The business side is also about taking the time to know more about the business.
yes.
Unfortunately, we live in a time now where it's more is required of artists. So that's not always comfortable, right?
Mhm.
You know, you're
Mhm.
discovering too with all that you're doing in media, right? Like
Mhm.
it would be, you probably would be wonderful if you had like 3 assistants and somebody doing this and somebody doing that, and that probably will come. But right now you're doing with the team that you have, and a lot of the work that you have to do, you're just getting it done, and then you're doing your marketing. It's no different
Mhm.
with music. It's like
Yeah.
all of those, all of the business aspects have to get taken care of. So I always use the example. I hope this is not too long an answer. Are we okay?
No, no. This is so the live only the live only stops it stops after like about 50 after about like 55 minutes. You
Okay.
can I could talk to you for a very very long
All right,
time. I
because I
think
could
that
go on, man. Because I'm
no,
passionate
please.
about this stuff. But I'll say
Exactly.
this real quick. Let's look at forget that it's music for a minute, because music is sometimes it's difficult for musicians to kind of take direction because it's so personal, right? Like we want
Mhm.
everybody to love our songs, love our playing, love our
Right.
singing. Everybody doesn't love what you do, right? So
Yeah.
let's talk
Mhm.
about it just as another kind of business. Let's take like a car company. So what does
Mhm.
a car company do? What does business mean to a car company? Well, you think that it means selling cars, but that's not true. That's only a slice of it. Selling cars is like one of the last parts of that business. Long before they sell it, they've got to do a creative part, which is design it. So just like you or I might write a song or practice to create our to improve our voice or to improve
Mhm.
my bass playing, that's no different from a car company that has to be on point with its design. It just can't just keep throwing out the same cars year after year after year. People are not going to want it, right? But then
Mhm.
the design work, it doesn't stop there, right? It's not great to just have something on paper that looks beautiful and shiny. They've got to do what? They actually have to produce the cars. So for you and I and other musicians, we actually have to finish songs. We have to record songs. We have to actually perform. So that's the production, of the production in the pure sense of the word. But then it doesn't stop there, because if you just design cars and produce cars, that's not enough to have a real business. You then have to market the cars so that people get excited about it. But even
Yeah.
that's not enough, because then you've got to sell it.
Yeah, you know it. You're really really on point with them. You're really really on point with this because I love talking about music business, social media, and advertisement, and how everything has changed and that it always changes and it always evolves. You know,
Absolutely, but sometimes we think about, is it music or is it business? That's not the
it's
right way
business.
to
Yeah, yeah.
look at it. It's 360, because it's
Mhm.
creativity. When you market, like when you put together your Instagram graphics, that's creativity. It's marketing, but
Mhm.
it's also creativity, right?
Mhm.
And when we see a great car commercial that gets us excited, that's creativity, right? It's a different kind of creativity. But then we always want to separate business and art, and they really go together, because here's the thing: all those designers who are waiting to design the next dream car that's been in their heart to create, the salespeople are helping them, the sales team, because they need income, they need money to come in to drive that other part. You know, so it's all related. It's not business or art. It's this holistic way of, that creativity is super important. And we want to be able to keep generating art and generating music, and we need those other aspects of that 360 model to work. The downside is that it's tough to do it all, but until you have a team, you got to figure it out and do as much as you can. It doesn't mean you're going to be an expert. It doesn't mean you're going to be always comfortable talking to promoters or talking to record company people, but learn a little bit and try to get comfortable talking about the business of music, because I think for artists, we need to understand the power and intelligence that we have. And when we haven't owned that, that's when we've been taken advantage of, right? Because we want to delegate it to people who we think know more. And in some ways they do know more, right? But they don't know things that are unlearnable, right? They don't know things that we can't learn or that we can't know more about. And the person who has the ultimate responsibility for our career is us. It's us. This is our music. So therefore, as much as we like to have people, be there and stand in the gap for us, ultimately we've got to have our eyes on things and understand things. And unfortunately, when we don't do that, we see the consequences of it. I mean, we see it in the hip hop world. We see amazing moguls, but everybody ain't a mogul. Some people, still get ripped off. And so the unfortunate thing is that when people get ripped off, it's not just a personal loss, it's a loss of culture. Because when people are taken advantage of and they get discouraged and they can't make more music, or whether it's hip hop, R&B, gospel, blues, rock, whatever it is, when people get discouraged, it's a loss for all of us.
Yeah, that's true. I I didn't understand how much, like, when I normally say, like, be a jack of all trades and a master of one, or a master of a couple, because if you know how to do a lot of things on the basic level, you can actually, do a lot of stuff to help yourself. You can be proactive, proactivity. And no one tells us when we go to school for music, or when we go to school for music, or we go to school to be a musician, or we learn to be a musician, that we're an entrepreneur. You're a walking entrepreneur, a walking billboard, a walking salesperson, an advertiser. You're wearing all these different hats. And that people that are when people look at, like, what is it I want to say, soloists or solo singers, normally if you look at a solo singer, that solo singer is not just a solo singer. That's a 10-person team that's behind them, that's pushing it. That's pushing all of that
Yep.
stuff in order to get there. And so I do really, really agree. It's all those things.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
And
all those things.
yeah, I just think it's time. There's never been a greater time in terms of the empowerment that musicians and artists have, if they're really ready to seize it.
Hmm.
It takes more effort and it takes courage, but there's never been a better time than now for artists to
Wow.
seize the moment.
Well, hopefully, like, I work with you some way in some form, whether on that side, on that business side, or musically, or whatever. I would just be fortunate to do that.
Well, I invite that, because I think you're really you're so highly skilled and so smart in the way that you're doing
Thank
things,
you.
and
Thank you.
yeah, we need more folks like you. We need more like you. Absolutely.
Um, do you have any merch for sale? So I try to ask, besides your music. Your music is your merch, but I mean, like, do you have any other merch for sale that you want to talk about for a little bit, or?
Yeah, so with our bass boot camp, we have a lot of apparel that's bass wear. So people can go to my website again and see that at either go bassbootcamp.com or geraldveasley.com, and they can see some of our apparel. And I have a new product that was actually designed by my daughter, Vanessa Veasley. Shout out to Sess. She actually
Oh,
has a product called Super Glow Oil, which is a fantastic head to toe um, body oil, all organic. But then I said,
oh,
is there something you can make for me for my hands, like to just,
mm.
to keep the inflammation down and to keep them moisturized? And she came with something called base butters. So, but yep, so
I
base butter
love
is
it.
another product that we're just introducing. We kind of tested it before the pandemic, but now we're going to roll that out. So, there's opportunity everywhere because, people have needs and also people, thankfully, they want to support. But yeah, look for base butters coming your way soon.
I love it. I love the name of it. That's very creative. And definitely your knuckles and hands will
Oh,
will hurt.
you know,
Especially you being a guitarist for so long, but or bassist, a
oh,
guitarist, and those what is it? They're thick.
yeah, the
The-
calluses and here's the thing, just to be really transparent, now that we've had a year of reduced performances, well, let's be honest, cut out performances.
yeah.
Now that I'm back performing again, I'm building up that stamina and that,
Mm.
flexibility and strength because it's one thing to practice at home, but it's another thing in front of an audience. Like the audience just, it requires more. There's something about that energy where you have to, no matter how much you relax, it requires a little more stamina. So base butters, I'm finding, is the solution for me.
Awesome, awesome. I like it. I like the bass. I like actually like thinking of that. So her mind is very creative, and that's something that you can actually use and actually need. So the bass butter, I'm feeling it. It sounds
You like
really,
that?
yeah, I like it. And your hands do hurt and stay dry. Hands like my hands are hurt too.
Oh,
So
well, especially
that's
now we're coming
awesome.
out a year of washing your hands like 20 times a day.
Exactly. Yes.
Right? So the hands are all typically always ashy.
And straight, straight, straight. I
Oh,
could, yeah. I feel like the bass butter is going to be a hit.
okay, you like
Definitely.
that? Good. We have to make sure we get you some. Maybe you can even do a promo for us. That would be great.
Oh my God. Well, I would love the opportunity for it. Definitely. Definitely. So I want to ask what what artists haven't you worked with but that you would like to work with?
So I'm gonna answer this as honestly as possible. Um, what I've learned through the years is that every artist I work with is a gift, and it's like unexpected. Like I used to think I would just want to work with big names,
Mm-hmm.
and I do have a wish list of some big names that I've never worked with. But I approach it with a little more maturity to understand that just because you admire someone's music, that doesn't mean that working with them is going to be everything you thought it was going to be, because they're just human, right?
Yes.
So,
Amen. Amen.
so I don't really, I don't really dream about that like I
Mm.
used to. But what I try
Mm-hmm.
to do is in the moment, whoever's on that stage with me or whoever's, on a recording with me, I try to appreciate it because, I'm old enough now to know what it feels like to lose musicians and to lose friends, right?
Mm.
Who were there
Mm-hmm.
and who are no longer there. And I don't want to take that for granted anymore. I want to appreciate the genius that's right in front of me as opposed to the genius on the mountaintop that I want to work with.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a great answer. That's definitely like what is it feels like an that felt like an epiphanal moment, you know.
Well, it's
So
just
that
what
was,
I've experienced, and I just understand too that often as artists and musicians, we're just people. I've had some
yeah.
artists, and also it's grown out of my experience. I've had some artists who I've met and were really disappointed because I put them on a pedestal. And then I had to check
Mm.
myself, like, what were you expecting? They already gave you their gift when they gave you their music.
Mm.
They already gave you their gift. So you want more sometimes. And that's human. I know one artist in particular, she's actually a famous gospel artist. And she sang us this song that really meant so much to me. And I got the chance to meet her. We were actually at the same event. And I went over and told her how much her music meant to me and all this. And she looked at me like I was crazy. And like, but you know what is I thought about, and that's when I started to understand, wait a minute, she already gave you the gift when she gave you the song. The song still resonates with me. And she's entitled to have a bad day.
Yeah.
And then years later, we were on an event together again. Actually, I wasn't playing, but I was at the event, and I went backstage, and she was totally different. So
Mm-hmm.
warm and so loving and so gracious. So I'm saying all that to say, I'm past the point of really having idols because
Mm.
it's not helpful. It's not helpful to put
Definitely.
people on a pedestal, and it's not realistic because people
Mm-hmm.
are just they're just people.
Just people, I feel you. Like I definitely actually got to that point at a pretty young age, and I like to talk to artists that I can talk to who are relatable, who treat people great, and that like that integrity and how they make you feel, like how I feel when I'm talking to you, like I'm feeling like we're just sitting down, we're eating lunch, and we're talking about
That's it.
music, and we're enjoying each other's company, and that's what like now I'm like that's like what I like about artists.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Me too. Me too.
That's
There,
what I like
there are a
about
few out there like that, and
yeah.
it's refreshing, isn't it? It really is.
It is, and that they're so approachable.
Mhm.
So okay, so anyway, I'm getting ready to wrap up this interview, but I would like for you to talk about where people can find you at again. And I want to thank all the viewers. I want to thank you. And thank you to Jazz Philadelphia as well for preserving jazz history and letting everyone know still about it and creating like a lot of things within Jazz Philadelphia.
Yep. So people can find me on social media, Gerald Veasley on Twitter, Gerald Veasley on Facebook, Gerald underscore Veasley. We found out on IG, and also we have the Unscripted Jazz on IG. I'll say one more quick thing about Unscripted Jazz. It's a series we host at South, which is here in
Yes.
Philadelphia. We've done close to 300 shows over the last 5 years, and we bring in guest artists from all over the country, and that's been a just fantastic experience. So people can find that at unscriptedjazz.com. And for all this information and to stay connected to me, go to geraldveasley.com or bassbootcamp.com. But I'd love to hear from folks. And thanks again for inviting me. This has just been
Oh, I'm so
cool
happy.
to connect with you and to hear your perspective. And thanks for the great questions and conversation.
All right, guys. Thank you. And I want to say thank you again and to have an awesome evening and enjoy the weather because it is beautiful.
Yes. Take care.
Thank you. Have a
Take care,
good night.
everybody. Be well.
Bye.
All right. Bye bye.